There's nothing quite as lonely as being innocent in a world that's already made up its mind about you. Evelyn Grace spent years teaching the children of Montana Territory, and in one afternoon, their parents branded her a thief and drove her into the wilderness to die. Now she's hiding in an old cabin, watching snow pile against the door, praying the storm will keep her safe. Then she hears boots outside. A man's voice cuts through the wind. The cabin belongs to him, a mountain man everyone whispers about, a man with blood in his past. But Cole Anders isn't there to hurt her. He knows the truth about who stole that money. The question is, will he help her prove it before the men hunting her arrive? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 5 days earlier, Pine Ridge had been home. Evelyn Grace stood at the front of the one-room schoolhouse, chalk dust settling on her navy wool dress as she wrote the day's arithmetic problems on the board. Sunlight streamed through the windows, catching the golden late autumn light that made Montana Territory feel almost gentle before winter's teeth showed. 12 children sat at their desks, ranging from 6-year-old Samuel Porter with his gap-toothed grin to 15-year-old Mary Hutchins, who stayed after most days to help clean the slates. "Now then," Evelyn said, turning to face her students, "who can tell me what 8 times 7 equals?" Hands shot up. She called on little Emma Ridley, whose father Thomas owned the general store. The girl's face lit up with pride when Evelyn praised her correct answer. These moments were what Evelyn lived for, watching young minds grasp new concepts, seeing confidence bloom where uncertainty had been. She'd been teaching in Pine Ridge for 3 years, ever since arriving on the stage from Helena with nothing but 2 trunks and a letter of recommendation from the Territorial Education Board. The town had been skeptical at first. She was only 24 then, unmarried, alone. But she'd won them over with patience and genuine care for their children. The schoolhouse had become her sanctuary, these students her purpose. After her mother died of fever when Evelyn was 12, her Aunt Margaret had raised her with stern practicality in a small Kansas town. Her mother had been a teacher too, beloved by her students, and Evelyn had promised at her graveside to follow that path. The silver locket around her neck, the only thing of value her mother had owned, held a small photograph of a woman with kind eyes and Evelyn's same dark hair. She touched it often, drawing strength from the connection. Pine Ridge was a hard-scrabble town of perhaps 200 souls, built where the railway spur ended and the mountains began. Most men worked timber or mining claims in the surrounding hills. The women made do with what they had, which was never quite enough, but always somehow sufficient. On Sundays, nearly everyone gathered at the white-clappered church, where Reverend Miller preached forgiveness and frontier justice in equal measure. The town had its characters. Sheriff John Dalton, a lean man in his 50s with grey threading his dark hair, kept order with a quiet authority earned through fairness rather than fear. Widow Martha Hayes ran the boarding house and knew everyone's business, though she was kind-hearted beneath her gossipy nature. And then there was Thomas Ridley. Ridley had inherited the general store from his father 5 years back. He was a soft-handed man of 40, with thinning hair and a persistent smile that never quite reached his eyes. He'd shown interest in Evelyn from her first week in town, appearing at the schoolhouse with donated supplies, offering to carry her parcels, suggesting tea at the boarding house. She'd declined politely but firmly. She had no interest in marriage, certainly not to a man whose attentions felt more like acquisition than affection. His interest had gradually curdled into something harder, small slights, charging her more for goods, forgetting to order the books she'd requested. Nothing she could formally complain about, but enough to make her uncomfortable. She'd started trading at the smaller mercantile across town, when possible. 3 weeks before everything fell apart, she'd been walking home late after preparing lessons when she saw something odd. Ridley stood in the alley behind his store, speaking with 3 rough-looking men she didn't recognize. Their clothes were worn, their manner tense. One counted money into Ridley's hand. When Ridley noticed her, his expression had flashed with something dark before smoothing into his practiced smile. "Good evening, Miss Grace, just completing some business." She'd nodded and hurried on, thinking little of it. Merchants dealt with all manner of people, but the memory lingered, unsettling in ways she couldn't articulate. The day it happened was a Tuesday in late October. The church had held a community fundraiser the week before, a harvest social to raise money for a new church bell. Evelyn had helped organize it, counting donations with Reverend Miller and Sheriff Dalton. The ornate iron lockbox had been heavy with coins and bills when they'd secured it in the church office. $347, a small fortune for Pine Ridge. Tuesday morning, Reverend Miller discovered the lockbox broken open. The money gone. By noon, somehow, suspicion had fallen on Evelyn. She learned later that Ridley had mentioned seeing her near the church Monday evening. Others corroborated. Yes, Miss Grace had been there late. What was she doing? The schoolhouse was the other direction from her boarding house room. She'd been returning a hymnal she'd borrowed, nothing more. But in the telling and retelling, innocent fact twisted into sinister implication. She was unmarried, wasn't she? Probably had debts. Women alone always needed money. And there was something proud about her, wasn't there? Something that held itself apart. The accusations came like a flood. She tried to defend herself, standing in the church while townspeople she'd served, whose children she'd taught, looked at her with hardening eyes. Sheriff Dalton had searched her room at the boarding house while she stood trembling in the parlor. He found nothing, because there was nothing to find. But absence of evidence wasn't innocence in the mob's mind, just proof she'd hidden it well. "Give us the money back." "Miss Grace," Reverend Miller had said, his voice heavy with disappointment that cut deeper than anger could have. "Just return what you took, and we can begin to heal." But she hadn't taken anything. She'd said so until her voice went hoarse. No one listened. Dalton had looked at her with something like sympathy, but also resignation. Without proof either way, without the money's return, what could he do? "The town wanted justice, I suggest," Dalton had finally said, "that you leave Pine Ridge, today, for your own safety." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a warning. She'd packed in 20 minutes, clothes, her mother's locket, her teaching Bible, the small slate she'd used in her first classroom. Martha Hayes, at least, had helped her, though even the widow's eyes held doubt. Evelyn left money for the room, though her savings were nearly gone, and walked out of town on foot. She'd meant to reach the next settlement 20 miles east. But the temperature dropped, and clouds rolled in heavy with snow. She'd been raised in Kansas, knew frontier hardship, but Montana winter was a different beast. When she spotted the old cabin nestled in the pines, half hidden and clearly abandoned, she'd nearly wept with relief. The cabin was a single room, maybe 12 feet square, with a stone fireplace and gaps in the log walls that let in cold drafts. Someone had built it with care once, but time had worn it down. She'd found a few old traps, some rusted tools, a moth-eaten blanket. She'd gathered what wood she could before the snow started, rationed the handful of provisions in her bag. 3 days alone. 3 days of watching the snow pile higher, of nursing a fire that seemed always on the verge of dying, of wondering if she'd freeze before anyone found her. 3 days of turning over every interaction with Ridley, every moment in town, trying to understand how her life had collapsed so completely. She'd prayed, though she wasn't sure anyone was listening. She'd written in her teaching Bible's margins, trying to document the truth in case someone found her body come spring. She touched her mother's locket and whispered apologies for failing to honor her memory. And then, on the 4th night, with the storm howling and the fire down to embers because her wood was nearly gone, she'd heard the boots outside, heavy, deliberate, the crunch of snow under weight. She'd frozen, breath caught as a shadow passed the window. Then the voice, deep and rough, "Ain't no use pretending. I can smell fear and wood smoke." The door rattled as someone tested it. "This is my cabin," the voice continued. "And you're going to open this door or I'm going to open it myself. Your choice how this goes." Evelyn had backed against the far wall, clutching the rusted knife she'd found among the tools. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst. After everything, the accusations, the flight, the cold and hunger, was this how it ended? Murdered by some mountain hermit in a forgotten cabin? "I don't want trouble," she'd called out, hating how her voice shook. "I'll leave. Just let me wait until morning." A pause, then, "Storm's gonna last 2 more days minimum. You won't make it an hour out there." Another pause. "Name's Cole Anders. I know you from town." Evelyn Grace, the schoolteacher, her grip on the knife loosened slightly. He knew her name. That could be good or very, very bad. "How do I know you won't hurt me?" she asked. "You don't. But if I wanted you hurt, I'd have already done it. I'm cold, and this is my cabin. Now open the door, Miss Grace. We're gonna have a conversation." She'd stared at the door for a long moment, weighing her chances. Stay and face the unknown man, or flee into the killing storm. Neither option offered safety. But at least inside, she had walls and fire. Her hand shook as she lifted the wooden bar and pulled the door open. The man who stepped inside brought winter with him. Cole Anders was not what Evelyn expected, though she couldn't have said what she'd been expecting. He stood well over 6 feet, broad-shouldered beneath a heavy bearskin coat crusted with ice. His face was weathered like old leather, lined with years and hard living, and a scar ran from his left temple down to his jaw. Dark hair shot through with grey hung past his collar, and his beard was thick and untrimmed. But it was his eyes that held her. Pale grey, sharp as winter sky, assessing everything in a single glance. He moved into the cabin with the economical grace of a predator, every motion purposeful. He kicked snow from his boots, shrugged off his pack, and surveyed the room with those calculating eyes. His gaze lingered on her meager supplies, the dying fire, her gaunt face. "You're in a bad way," he said. Not unkind, just factual. Evelyn kept the knife visible but lowered. "I've managed. For now." He moved to the fireplace and she tensed, but he only knelt to examine the embers. "You're burning the wood wrong. Too fast, too hot. Won't last the night this way." He began rebuilding the fire with practiced hands, adding logs from his own pack in a careful structure. "Wood needs air to burn proper, but not so much it races away from you." She watched him work, unsure whether to speak or stay silent. He seemed to expect neither. "I didn't steal that money," she said finally, "because she couldn't bear another person thinking she had. I know." He didn't look up from the fire. The words stunned her more than any accusation could have. "What?" I said, "I know." He struck flint, coaxed flame to tinder, and sat back as the fire caught properly. The warmth that rolled out was already stronger than anything she'd achieved in 3 days. He finally looked at her. "I was in town that day. Saw things." Evelyn's legs felt weak. She sank onto the rough bench by the wall. "You saw what happened?" "Not the theft itself. But I saw Thomas Ridley acting nervous as a cat in a thunderstorm. Morning of the day they found the lockbox broken open." Cole pulled off his gloves, revealing scarred, capable hands. "He was lurking around the church when decent folk were still abed. When he noticed me watching, he near about jumped out of his skin. 'Why didn't you tell someone?' The question came sharper than she intended. Cole's expression didn't change. "Tell who? Sheriff? Town council? And say what? That I, a man most folks cross the street to avoid, saw their respected merchant near a church?" He shook his head. "My word's worth less than spit in Pine Ridge. Besides, wasn't my business. It became my business when they accused me." Her voice cracked despite her effort to control it. "It did." He pulled dried meat from his pack. Hardtack, a small sack of cornmeal. He set them on the table without ceremony. "You're hungry. Eat." Pride warred with hunger. Hunger won. She took a piece of the jerky, forcing herself to chew slowly, though she wanted to devour it. The salt and smoke taste was almost overwhelming after days of near starvation. Cole moved around the cabin with the familiarity of ownership, checking the walls, the roof beams, the shutters. "Built this place 8 years back," he said. "Used to trap up here before I decided staying put made more sense than roaming. Come down once a month or so, make sure it's still standing. I'm sorry for intruding." The words felt inadequate. "You needed shelter. I understand necessity. He pulled a tin cup from his pack, filled it with snow, and set it near the fire to melt. What I don't understand is why you ran this direction. Nothing but mountain and winter out here. I didn't plan to stay. I was trying to reach the next settlement. She wrapped her arms around herself. The storm came faster than I expected. Montana don't wait for expectations. He poured the melted snow into the cup, added something from a flask. Tea, she realized as the scent reached her. He handed it to her. Drink! You're half frozen. The warmth of the cup in her hands was almost painful. She sipped, tasting pine and something bitter but restorative. Why are you helping me? Cole was quiet for a moment, staring into the fire. Because I know what it's like to be judged for something you didn't do. And I know what it's like to be guilty of things you did do and have nobody care about the difference. He looked at her then, and something in his expression was terribly sad. World's short on mercy. Figure I can spare some when it's warranted. You believe me. Just like that. I believe what I saw. Ridley's not a good liar, least not with his body. He was guilty of something that morning. Cole pulled out his hunting knife, and Evelyn flinched before she could stop herself. He noticed, sighed, and simply used it to cut a piece of jerky for himself. I ain't gonna hurt you, Miss Grace. If that was my intent, we wouldn't be talking. She nodded, trying to calm her racing heart. I'm sorry. I don't know who to trust anymore. Smart. Trust gets people killed. He chewed thoughtfully. But sometimes you got to trust anyway, or you're already dead in ways that matter more. They sat in silence for a time, the fire crackling, wind howling outside. Evelyn felt exhaustion pulling at her, now that warmth and food had taken the edge off her desperation. But questions still burned. You said you know me from town, but I don't remember seeing you. That's because I'm good at not being seen when I don't want to be. He refilled her cup with more hot tea. I come to Pine Ridge maybe 4 times a year for supplies. Stay just long enough to trade pelts and leave. Most folks are happy to see my back. Why do they fear you? Cole's smile was without humor. Because before I came to this mountain, I was a bounty hunter. Tracked men for money. Killed some when they didn't come peaceful. He said it plain, without pride or shame. Did that work for near 20 years? Got good at it. Got known for it. And then I got tired of it. Evelyn should have been frightened. A killer sitting across from her, admitting to violence as casually as another man might discuss his carpentry. But something in his weariness, in the weight he carried, spoke of regret rather than menace. What made you stop? Realized I'd become the same as the men I was hunting, just with a badge to make it legal. He looked at his hands, as though seeing blood on them. Bounty hunting ain't justice. It's just violence with paperwork. So I walked away. Found this mountain. Been here 6 years now. That must be lonely. It is. But it's clean. He met her eyes. No one asking me to be something I'm not. No one depending on me to save them or kill for them. Just me and the quiet. Until tonight. Until tonight, he agreed. Evelyn set down her cup, gathering courage. You said Ridley was guilty of something. Do you think he stole the money? Seems likely. He's got means and opportunity. Question is why? Cole leaned back, thinking. Ridley's not hurting for money, least not visibly. Store does steady business. So why risk stealing from a church collection? Maybe he is hurting. Maybe he's hiding debts. Maybe. Cole didn't sound convinced. Or maybe the money wasn't the point. What do you mean? Think about it. $300 is good money, but it ain't fortune. Not worth the risk for a man in Ridley's position. But framing you for it? He gestured at her. That serves another purpose. Gets rid of someone. Discredits them. Makes them run. The idea settled over Evelyn like cold water. You think he wanted me gone? I think it's possible. Man showed interest in you. Everyone knew it. You turned him down. Some men don't take rejection well. Cole's voice went hard. And some men see women as property to be acquired or destroyed. Evelyn thought of Ridley's persistent attention, the way his smiles had grown forced when she declined his invitations, the subtle punishments afterward. She thought of seeing him with those rough men in the alley, the flash of anger when he'd noticed her watching. I saw him, she said slowly. 3 weeks ago, late at night behind his store, he was with men I didn't recognize. They were exchanging money. Cole's attention sharpened. What kind of men? Hard men. Worn clothes, trail dust. They looked like drifters, but they carried themselves like soldiers. Or gunslingers. She wrapped her shawl tighter. When Ridley saw me, he looked angry for just a moment before he covered it. Did you tell anyone? No, it seemed like his business, not mine. I just hurried home. She felt foolish now. Do you think that's why he framed me? Because I saw something I shouldn't have? Could be. Or could be he planned to frame you anyway, and you seeing him just moved up his timeline. Cole stood, moved to the window, peered out at the storm. Either way, you're in deeper than simple theft accusations. Fear coiled in Evelyn's stomach. What do you mean? Cole turned to face her, his expression grave. If Ridley's dealing with the kind of men you described, and if he's willing to destroy your life to cover it up, then whatever he's involved in is serious. Serious enough to kill for kill! The word came out as barely a whisper. Why do you think he'd be content with you just leaving town? If you saw something that threatens him, he can't afford you coming back and talking. Can't afford you reaching the next settlement and filing complaints with a territorial marshal. Cole's voice was gentle, but firm. Miss Grace, I don't think they expected you to survive out here. I think they counted on the mountain doing their work for them. The full horror of her situation crashed over Evelyn. She'd been so focused on the injustice of the accusation that she hadn't considered the deeper danger. She'd thought them cruel but not murderous. Now looking at Cole's serious face, she understood how naive that had been. So what do I do? She hated how small her voice sounded. Cole came back to the fire, crouched so they were eye level. First you survive. Storm's gonna last another day or two. We stay here, stay warm, keep our strength up. Then when weather breaks, we figure out how to prove your innocence and expose whatever Ridley's hiding. We? She searched his face. Why would you help me with that? You said you left that life behind. Staying uninvolved. I did. But I also said I know what it's like to be judged wrong. And I know what it's like to be guilty. He stood, moved back to his pack. Maybe helping you square some debt I owe to the universe. Maybe I'm just tired of watching innocent folks suffer when I got the means to help. He pulled out a bedroll. Or maybe I'm just old and sentimental. Take your pick. Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes for the first time since fleeing town. Not from despair this time, but from gratitude. Someone believed her. Someone with the skills and strength to actually do something about it. Thank you, she whispered. Cole spread his bedroll on the far side of the cabin, giving her space and privacy. Don't thank me yet. We got a long road ahead, and it's gonna be dangerous. Ridley's not gonna give up easy, and whoever he's working with is likely worse. I don't care. And she found she meant it. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not going to live the rest of my life as a fugitive for a crime I didn't commit. Good. Cole settled onto his bedroll, positioned so he faced the door. Even resting, he was alert. Get some sleep, Miss Grace. Real sleep, not the half-awake kind you've been doing. I'll keep watch. Evelyn lay on the bench, wrapped in her shawl and the old blanket, feeling the warmth from the properly built fire for the first time in days. Despite everything, the danger, the uncertainty, the fear, she felt something she hadn't felt since the accusations began. Hope. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside the cabin, for the first time in a very long time, Evelyn Grace wasn't alone. Cole left at first light, moving through the snow-laden forest with the silent efficiency of a man who'd spent years tracking prey. Evelyn watched from the window until he disappeared among the pines, then turned back to the empty cabin, feeling suddenly vulnerable despite the fire and stocked supplies. She tried to occupy herself with small tasks, reorganizing her few possessions, writing in the margins of her teaching Bible, practicing the survival skills Cole had shown her, but her mind kept drifting to worse scenarios. What if someone recognized Cole and connected him to her? What if Ridley had men watching the trails? What if Cole simply decided helping her was too dangerous and didn't come back? That last thought she dismissed immediately. Cole Anders might be many things, but he wasn't a man who broke promises. The hours crawled past. She rationed the firewood carefully as he'd taught her, kept watch through the window, though she saw nothing but snow and trees. By late afternoon, doubt crept in despite her faith in him. What if something had happened? What if he was hurt or captured or... The soft whistle outside nearly made her cry with relief. It was the signal he'd taught her, 3 short notes like a winter bird. She hurried to the door and opened it to find Cole standing there, covered in snow and looking grim. "What happened?" she asked as he entered and shook off the cold. "Town's settled down. No more posse. Most folks figure you're dead by now, frozen somewhere in the mountains." He pulled off his gloves, accepted the warm coffee she'd prepared. "They're planning a memorial service for you next Sunday." The thought of her own memorial made Evelyn's stomach turn. "Did you learn anything useful?" "Some. I played the role of trapper come down for supplies. Folks are wary of me, but they talk around me, especially after a few drinks at the saloon." He warmed his hands on the cup. "Thomas Ridley's been busy. He's building an addition onto his store. New stock arriving regularly. Seems to have come into money somehow. From the church collection. That's what I thought too. But $300 doesn't explain what I saw." Cole set down his cup and pulled a small notebook from his pocket, something he'd clearly purchased in town. He'd made rough sketches and notes. "The building materials he's bringing in? That's thousands of dollars worth. The inventory. Same. Either he robbed a bank we don't know about, or something else is going on." Evelyn studied his notes. "Those men I saw him with, could they be connected?" "That's what I'm thinking." I asked some careful questions at the saloon, pretended curiosity about whether Ridley was expanding because Pine Ridge was growing. Cole flipped a page in the notebook. Bartender mentioned he'd seen rough types going in and out of Ridley's store at odd hours. Figured they were just customers, but he seemed uneasy about them. "Did anyone mention me?" Cole's expression softened. "Widow Hayes spoke up when someone made a cruel joke about you. Said you were a good teacher and deserved benefit of the doubt even if you'd made mistakes." "Sheriff Dalton was there," he agreed. "Said the whole situation troubled him, but without evidence, he had to follow what the town decided." Evelyn finished bitterly. "Sheriff Dalton always did bend to popular opinion. Maybe, or maybe he's more careful than that. When I was leaving, he followed me outside. Asked if I'd seen any sign of you in the mountains." Cole met her eyes. I said no, naturally. But he looked relieved almost, like he hoped I was lying. "You think he might help us?" "I think he's a man with doubts who wants to do right, but doesn't know how. That makes him either a potential ally or a liability." Cole pulled out a second item from his coat, a newspaper. "Found this too. From Helena, Territorial News." He unfolded it and pointed to a small article. Evelyn leaned close to read. The headline said, "Federal Marshals investigate missing Confederate gold." Her breath caught. Confederate gold. "Read it." The article explained that federal authorities were tracking a cache of Confederate gold coins that had disappeared at the war's end nearly 25 years prior. Recent intelligence suggested the gold had resurfaced in Montana Territory. Marshals were investigating several towns, following leads about unusual spending patterns and gold coins appearing in circulation. "Those men I saw with Ridley," Evelyn said slowly. "You don't think—" "I think Ridley's involved in something much bigger than church theft." Cole's face was serious. "I think he stole that money and framed you to get you out of the way because you saw something that night. Or because he thought you might have, but I didn't see anything except him talking to those men. I didn't even think it was important. Doesn't matter what you actually saw. Matters what he thinks you saw, or what you might figure out." Cole stood, paced the small cabin. "If Ridley's part of a ring dealing in stolen Confederate gold, he can't afford any witnesses, any questions. You were a threat just by being observant and trusted in the community." The scope of it overwhelmed Evelyn. She thought herself the victim of petty vengeance, perhaps of Ridley's wounded pride. But this was genuine danger, the kind that got people killed in unmarked graves. "What do we do?" she asked. "We need proof. Hard evidence linking Ridley to the gold." Cole stopped pacing, looked at her. "Which means we need to get into his store. Really get in, search it properly. That's incredibly dangerous." "It is. But it's the only way to prove your innocence and expose his crimes." He knelt in front of her, took her hands. "I won't lie to you, Evelyn. This is more dangerous than I thought when I agreed to help." If Ridley's working with the kind of men who deal in stolen war gold, they won't hesitate to kill to protect their secret. Evelyn looked at their joined hands, his scarred and weathered, hers soft and ink-stained from years of teaching. I'm tired of running, tired of hiding. If the truth is in that store, then we find it. It might mean confronting Ridley directly. It might mean putting yourself in his reach. Then that's what we do. She squeezed his hands. I trust you, Cole. You'll keep me safe. Something shifted in his expression, vulnerability mixed with determination. I'll die before I let him hurt you. Let's make sure neither of us dies. She managed a small smile. I have students to get back to, and you have a lot more carving to do. That brought a hint of warmth to his eyes. Deal. They spent the evening planning in earnest. Cole sketched the layout of Pine Ridge from memory. The store's location, the alleys, the sight lines, where the sheriff's office stood in relation to everything else. They discussed timing, what supplies they'd need, how to approach without being seen. We go in 3 nights from now, Cole decided. New moon, darkest night. I'll scout the approaches tomorrow, watch Ridley's patterns. Then we move. 3 days. It felt like both too long and not long enough. 3 days to prepare properly. Rush this and we're dead or caught. He looked at her seriously. You need to be certain, Evelyn. Once we start this, there's no backing out. We either succeed and clear your name, or we fail and likely die trying. She thought of her students, of Mary Hutchins, who wanted to be a teacher, of little Emma Ridley, whose father was apparently a criminal, of the life she'd built and lost. She thought of her mother's promise, of the legacy she wanted to leave. I'm certain, she said firmly. Cole nodded, respect clear in his eyes. Then we start tomorrow. I'll teach you everything I know about moving unseen, about reading danger, about surviving when things go wrong. He stood, offered his hand to help her up. By the time we walk into that town, you'll be ready. Evelyn took his hand, let him pull her to her feet. They stood close in the firelight, and she saw her own determination reflected in his face. Thank you, she said softly, for believing in me, for risking yourself. Thank you for giving me a reason to. He didn't let go of her hand. Been a long time since I felt like I mattered for something good. You matter, Evelyn said, and meant it with her whole heart. They stood there as the fire crackled and the night deepened outside. 2 unlikely allies bound by shared purpose and something deeper that neither quite dared to name. 3 days until they put everything on the line. 3 days to prepare for either redemption or ruin. Evelyn had never been more frightened or more ready. The next 2 days passed in intense preparation. Cole transformed from the quiet mountain man into the skilled tracker and hunter he'd once been, teaching Evelyn with patience and precision. Walk on the outside of your feet, he instructed as they practiced moving through the snow. Feel for branches before you put your weight down. Sound travels far in cold air. Every crack and snap announces you. Evelyn followed his guidance, trying to match his near-silent movement. At first she felt clumsy, painfully loud despite her efforts. But gradually, as her body learned the rhythm, she improved. Cole's rare smile when she successfully crossed a stretch of frozen ground without noise made her feel accomplished, in ways her teaching awards never had. He taught her to read the forest, how to tell which shadows were safe, which sounds meant danger, how to use terrain for cover. You're not trying to be invisible, he explained. You're trying to be uninteresting. Part of the landscape, something eyes slide past without registering as threat or target. In the evenings, he showed her defensive techniques. I won't teach you to fight, he said firmly. Fighting means you're already caught. But I'll teach you to break away, to buy seconds to run. He positioned her hands, showed her where to strike if grabbed, eyes, throat, knees. The lesson felt disturbingly practical. This wasn't theoretical danger anymore. This was preparation for real violence. Hit hard, don't hesitate, then run like hell, Cole instructed. Your goal isn't to win. It's to survive long enough to escape. On the second evening, as they rested from training, Evelyn noticed Cole cleaning a small pistol she hadn't seen before. I want you to carry this, he said, holding it out. She recoiled slightly. I don't know how to shoot. Then I'll teach you. Tomorrow, first light, we'll go far enough from the cabin that sound won't carry. His expression was serious. I hope you never have to use it. But hope's not a strategy. That night, Evelyn lay awake long after Cole's breathing settled into sleep's rhythm. She thought about the woman she'd been just weeks ago, a schoolteacher who'd never imagined holding a weapon, who'd believed in justice and community and the inherent goodness of people. That woman felt like a stranger now, but she didn't feel lost. She felt changed. Tempered, like steel in fire, morning brought the shooting lesson. Cole led her to a clearing, well away from the cabin, set up targets against a snow-covered bank. The pistol felt heavy and wrong in her hand. "It's a tool," Cole said, standing behind her, guiding her stance. "Nothing more. You don't have to like it. You just have to know how to use it if your life depends on it." His hands positioned hers, thumbs together, arms extended but not locked, weight forward. His body was warm behind her, solid and reassuring despite the grim nature of the lesson. "Breathe out, squeeze gently," he murmured near her ear. "Don't jerk." Gentle pressure until the gun fired, the recoil jarring her arms. The shot went wide of the target. "Good," Cole said. Again. They practiced until her arms ached and her ears rang, despite the cloth Cole had her used to muffle the sound. By the end, she could hit the target more often than not. She'd never be a marksman, but she could defend herself if necessary. "That's all I needed to see," Cole said, helping her clean and reload the weapon. "You don't freeze." "That's more important than accuracy. Lots of people practice shooting, but never consider what it means to point a weapon at another person. You handled it well. I don't feel like I handled it well. I feel sick." "Good. That means you're not a killer. You're just someone prepared to survive." He squeezed her shoulder gently. "There's a difference. Don't forget that." That afternoon, their last before the mission, they went over the plan one final time. Cole had sketched detailed maps of the town, marked routes and backup routes, identified places to hide if things went wrong. "I go in first," he said, pointing to his marks. "Make sure the area's clear. You follow at a distance, stay in shadow. We meet at the alley behind Ridley's store. Here. I'll pick the lock on the back door. Should take less than a minute if the mechanism's standard. And if someone sees us, then we abort. Run separate directions, meet back at the cabin." His finger traced escape routes. "Your safety is more important than the mission." "Our safety," Evelyn corrected. "I'm not losing you to this." Cole looked up and something warm flickered in his eyes. "Our safety," he agreed. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the maps between them, the fire crackling. Evelyn found herself memorizing his face, the scar, the weathered lines, the grey in his hair. When had he become so dear to her? She couldn't pinpoint a single moment. It had grown gradually, like spring arriving one slight warming at a time, until suddenly winter was gone. "Cole," she said softly, "if something goes wrong tomorrow, nothing's going wrong. But if it does, I want you to know," she struggled for words. "These days with you have been the most frightening of my life, but also the most alive I've ever felt. You've shown me strength I didn't know I had." Cole set aside the maps and moved closer, taking her hand. "Evelyn, if something goes wrong, if I had to choose between the mission and keeping you safe, don't say that. We need the evidence. We need you alive more." His grip tightened. "I've spent 6 years on this mountain, hiding from the world, convinced I had nothing left to offer anyone. Then you walked into my cabin, frightened and freezing, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to have purpose. To matter." Evelyn's eyes burned with tears. "You've always mattered. Maybe, but I didn't feel it until you." He raised his free hand, hesitated, then gently touched her face. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know. I haven't felt this way since Sarah. Didn't think I could. But you—" She closed the distance between them, kissing him before fear or doubt could stop her. For a moment he froze, surprised, then his arms came around her and he kissed her back with a tenderness that made her heart ache. When they parted, both breathless, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "We're going to survive this," he said fiercely. "Both of us. We're going to clear your name, and then we're going to figure out what this is between us." I promise you that. I'll hold you to it, Evelyn whispered. They held each other as the afternoon light faded, finding courage in closeness, strength in shared purpose. Tomorrow would bring danger and uncertainty. But tonight they had this: connection, hope, and the fragile promise of a future worth fighting for. When full darkness fell, they prepared their gear for the mission. Every movement was careful, deliberate. Cole checked his tools, his weapons. Evelyn, dressed in dark clothes, borrowed from his pack, secured her mother's locket beneath her shirt where it couldn't catch light or make noise. "Get some rest," Cole said finally. "We leave 2 hours after sunset tomorrow. That gives us time to reach town and get positioned before the deepest part of night." But neither of them slept well. Evelyn lay awake listening to Cole's restless movements, knowing he was as tense as she was. They were two people on the edge of either redemption or disaster, holding on to hope with both hands. Tomorrow, everything would change. The night was cold and moonless, perfect for their purpose. Evelyn followed Cole through the darkness, her steps careful and deliberate as he'd taught her. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her hands remained steady. The pistol pressed against her side beneath her coat, a weight she'd grown accustomed to over the past days. Pine Ridge appeared gradually through the trees, scattered lights in windows, smoke rising from chimneys. Most honest folk were abed by this hour. Cole held up a hand, signaling her to stop. They crouched in the tree line, watching and listening. "Sheriff's office is dark," Cole murmured, barely audible. "Saloon's got a few stragglers, but they'll be drunk and inward-focused. Ridley's store, there, see? Single lamp in the back window." Evelyn saw it, a dim glow from what must be Ridley's office. "He's still there, or left the lamp burning. We wait, give it 30 minutes. If the light stays steady and we see no movement, we go." They waited in cold silence, watching. Evelyn's legs cramped from crouching, but she didn't move. This was the hardest part of all Cole's training, the patience to remain still when every instinct screamed to move. Finally, Cole touched her shoulder. "Time. Remember, I go first. You follow at 10 count. Stay in shadows. If anything feels wrong, you run. Don't wait for me. I'm not leaving you. Evelyn, we go together, or not at all." She met his eyes, saw his frustration and reluctant admiration. "Stubborn woman," he muttered, but there was affection in it. "Fine, but you follow my lead exactly. Understood?" "Understood." They moved like ghosts through the town's outskirts. Evelyn's training served her well. She matched Cole's path, used the same shadows, made almost no sound. The back alley behind Ridley's store was narrow and dark, piled with crates and refuse. Perfect cover. Cole examined the back door's lock by touch, pulled tools from his pocket. Evelyn kept watch, scanning the darkness for movement. Her breath came in small white clouds despite her efforts to stay calm. Metal scraped softly against metal, once, twice, then a quiet click. "We're in," Cole whispered. "Stay close." The store's back room was cramped and cluttered. Supplies, inventory, the business detritus of a frontier merchant. Cole moved through it with confidence, heading toward the office where they'd seen the lamp. Evelyn followed, every nerve on alert. The office door was unlocked. Inside, a desk piled with papers, ledgers on shelves, a small safe in the corner. Cole immediately went to the safe. "This is new," he muttered. "Expensive. Doesn't match the rest of his operation." While he worked on the safe, Evelyn examined the desk. Most papers were mundane: orders, accounts, letters from suppliers. But then she found something odd. A letter on fine paper, the handwriting educated. She held it up to the lamplight. "Cole," she whispered urgently. "Look at this." He came over, read over her shoulder. The letter referenced a shipment and agreed price, and mentioned meeting the usual place on the 15th. It was signed with only initials, JB, no names, but definitely suspicious, Cole said. "Put it in your pocket. Keep looking." Evelyn searched the desk drawers while Cole returned to the safe. In the bottom drawer, hidden under a false bottom, she found something that made her gasp: the ornate iron lockbox from the church. "Empty but unmistakable." "Cole, I see it. Good. That proves he took it." The safe clicked open. "Now let's see what he's protecting." He swung the safe door open carefully. Inside were several canvas bags. Cole pulled one out, loosened the drawstring and tilted it toward the lamplight. Gold coins spilled into his palm. But not regular gold, these were different, old Confederate. "Dear God," Evelyn breathed. Cole's expression was grim. "It's true. The gold from that newspaper article, Ridley has it. How much?" He examined the other bags quickly. "Thousands of dollars worth, maybe more. This is—" He stopped, held up one of the coins to the light. "This isn't all the missing gold." "Can't be. But it's enough to hang him." A board creaked in the outer room. They froze. Cole's hand went to his pistol. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. The door burst open. Thomas Ridley stood there with a shotgun, two rough-looking men behind him with drawn weapons. His face was red with rage and triumph. "I knew it," Ridley snarled. "I knew you weren't dead, you meddling witch. And Colandus, I should have guessed she'd find help." Cole moved slightly, putting himself between Evelyn and the guns. "Seems we found your secret, Ridley." "Confederate gold." "That's federal crime. Hanging offense. Only if anyone knows about it." Ridley's smile was ugly. "You two broke into my store. I'm well within my rights to shoot you as thieves. In fact, that's exactly what happened, isn't it, boys?" The two men grinned. One of them looked familiar. Evelyn realized with shock she'd seen him before. "One of the men in the alley that night? You framed me," Evelyn said, her voice shaking with anger. "Destroyed my life for what? Because I saw you with these criminals? Because you were a risk," Ridley snapped. "Always watching, always so righteous and observant. You saw me that night, and even if you didn't understand what you saw, eventually you might ask questions. Might mention it to someone else. I couldn't afford that. So you stole from your own church and blame me. $300 well spent, I'd say. Got rid of you and gave me cover to move inventory without anyone looking too close at my finances." He gestured with the shotgun. "Now carefully, Anders, put your weapons on the desk. Both of you. Nice and slow." Cole complied, his face expressionless. Evelyn set her pistol down with trembling hands. "You won't get away with this," Cole said. "Federal marshals are already investigating. That newspaper article, they're close to finding the gold ring. They'll find whatever we leave for them," one of the rough men said. He had a scar across his nose and eyes that held no light. "We've stayed ahead of them for 2 years. We'll stay ahead now." "The gold's not yours," Evelyn said, trying to find some argument that might reach them. "It belongs to the government." "You're stealing from a dead government," Ridley interrupted. "The Confederacy's gone. This gold's just sitting in some forgotten cache, doing nobody any good. We're redistributing it. Quite the public service, really. By murder and theft and ruining innocent lives." Evelyn's hands clenched into fists. "You're monsters." "We're businessmen," Ridley corrected. "And you're loose ends. Wilson, Crane, tie them up. We'll take them up the mountain, make it look like they froze. 2 people who got lost trying to rob me, got away into the wilderness and died." Very tragic. The 2 men moved forward. Cole tensed, and Evelyn knew he was calculating odds, looking for any opening. But 3 guns against 2 unarmed people. The math was brutal. Then, from outside, a voice called, "Ridley, you in there?" "Saw your lamp burning late?" Sheriff Dalton's voice. Ridley's face went white, then red. "Don't say a word," he hissed at Cole and Evelyn. To his men, "Hide them now." Wilson grabbed Evelyn, his hand over her mouth, dragging her toward a closet. Crane moved on Cole, but Cole was faster. He threw himself backward, smashing them both into shelves. Ledgers crashed down, creating tremendous noise. "In here, Sheriff." Cole roared. "Ridley's got the gold. He's got—" Crane's fist caught Cole's jaw, snapping his head back. But the damage was done. They heard running feet, the back door crashing open. "Drop your weapons," Dalton's voice boomed. "By authority of the Montana Territory, drop them now." Ridley swung his shotgun toward the door, just as Dalton burst in with his own weapon drawn. Time seemed to slow. Evelyn saw Ridley's finger tighten on the trigger, saw Dalton's expression shift from authority to fear. She didn't think. She grabbed a heavy ledger from the fallen pile and hurled it at Ridley's head with all her strength. It struck him in the temple. His shot went wild, blasting a hole in the ceiling. Dalton's return fire was controlled, one shot that hit Ridley's shoulder, spinning him around and dropping him to the floor. Wilson let Evelyn go, hands reaching for the sky. "Oh, don't shoot." "We surrender." Crane, seeing his options gone, did the same. Wasn't our idea. Ridley's the boss. Dalton kept his weapon trained on them, face hard. On the ground! All of you. Face down, hands visible. They complied. Dalton moved carefully, kicked their weapons away, then looked at Cole and Evelyn. You two, you all right? We're fine, Cole said, helping Evelyn to her feet. Sheriff, look in the safe. Confederate gold! Ridley's been hiding it, moving it. He's part of the ring you've been hearing about. Dalton looked, saw the gold coins, and his expression turned grim. I'll be damned. I came here because I saw movement, thought maybe vandals. Instead I find, he looked at Evelyn. Miss Grace, most of town thinks you're dead. Most of town thought I was a thief, Evelyn said, finding her voice. But I'm neither. Ridley framed me because I saw him with these men. The church money is here too. The lockbox is in the desk drawer. Dalton checked, found it. His face showed conflict, relief and shame warring. I should have believed you. Should have investigated deeper. You're here now, Evelyn said. That's what matters. More footsteps outside, townspeople drawn by the gunshot. Dalton called for help, for rope, for someone to fetch the town doctor for Ridley's wound. As people crowded in, seeing the gold, seeing the empty lockbox, seeing Evelyn alive, the truth began to dawn. Widow Hayes pushed through the crowd, saw Evelyn, and burst into tears. Oh, my dear girl, we all thought. The scene dissolved into controlled chaos as Dalton arrested Ridley and his men, as townspeople gaped at the gold and understood at last what had really happened. Through it all, Cole stayed close to Evelyn, his hand on her shoulder, steady and protective. She'd been right to trust him. Together, they'd found the truth. Now came the reckoning. The sheriff's office was cramped with Ridley and his 2 men locked in the cells, but Dalton had insisted on keeping them under his direct watch until federal marshals could arrive. Word had been sent to Helena immediately. Ridley's capture and the discovery of Confederate gold was bigger than territorial law could handle alone. Evelyn sat in Dalton's office, wrapped in a blanket someone had brought, still trembling from the confrontation. Cole stood near the window, watching the street where curious townspeople gathered despite the late hour. The gold sat on Dalton's desk, glinting in the lamplight, evidence of crimes that stretched back decades. Miss Grace, Dalton said gently, sitting across from her. I owe you an apology, we all do. We let fear and assumption guide us instead of evidence and fairness. You believed what seemed true, Evelyn said, though the words tasted bitter. Thomas Ridley was respected. I was just a woman alone, easy to doubt. That's no excuse. Dalton's jaw tightened. I'm sworn to uphold justice, not popular opinion. I failed you. I'll carry that. Cole turned from the window. What matters now is what happens next. Ridley's caught, but he's not the top of this operation. Those men with him, Wilson and Crane, they're just hired muscle. Someone organized this whole network. The letter, Evelyn said, remembering. She pulled the paper from her pocket, handed it to Dalton. We found this in his desk. It references shipments and prices. Signed J.B. Dalton studied it, frowning. J.B., I know those initials. James Blackwood. He's a railway executive based in Helena. Wealthy man, influential. Sits on the territorial board. A man with that kind of position could move goods easily, Cole said. Railway access, authority to avoid too much scrutiny. Perfect cover for moving stolen gold. But we can't prove it from this letter alone, Dalton said. It's suggestive but not definitive. A good lawyer would tear it apart. Then we need more. Cole's voice was hard. We need Ridley or his men to talk. Testify against Blackwood. They won't, Dalton said grimly. Men like that, they're more afraid of their boss than they are of hanging. And without solid testimony, Blackwood stays untouchable. Evelyn stood, paced the small office. Her mind worked through the problem like planning a difficult lesson. What if we could prove the gold came through Blackwood's railway? Records, shipping manifests, something that connects him directly? Those records would be in Helena, in Blackwood's own office, most likely. Dalton shook his head. Even with what we have here, getting a warrant for a territorial board member would take weeks. And that's assuming we could convince a judge without Blackwood getting wind of it and destroying evidence. So he gets away. Evelyn's hands clenched. He orchestrates this whole operation, ruins lives, and faces no consequences because he's wealthy and connected. Not if we're smart about it. All eyes turned to Cole. He was staring at the gold, his expression thoughtful. Blackwood doesn't know we've caught Ridley yet. News won't travel that fast, especially at night. Right now, he thinks everything is secure. What are you suggesting? Dalton asked. Ridley was supposed to move this gold soon. That letter mentions the 15th, which is 3 days from now. Blackwood's expecting a shipment. Cole looked at Dalton.
What if we give him one?
Understanding dawned on Evelyn's face. We use the gold as bait. Send it to Blackwood as though everything is normal, but follow it. Catch him receiving stolen Confederate gold. That's entrapment, Dalton said. But he didn't sound opposed, just cautious. That's justice. Cole moved to the desk, studied the gold. We send the shipment, but we make sure federal marshals are there to witness delivery. Catch Blackwood red-handed with gold he can't explain. Dalton was quiet for a long moment, weighing options.
It's risky.
If Blackwood suspects anything, he'll disappear. Men with his resources can vanish like smoke, but if we do nothing, he does vanish anyway, just slower. Cole met the sheriff's eyes. We have a chance here. Might be the only one we get. I'd need to coordinate with the marshals. They'd have to agree to the plan, position people in Helena without alerting Blackwood. Dalton pulled out paper, began writing. I'll send a priority wire first thing in the morning. See if Marshal Crawford is willing to work with us. While we wait, Evelyn said, we need to keep Ridley's arrest quiet. If word reaches Helena through normal channels, Blackwood might hear. I'll talk to folks, Dalton agreed. Tell them this is sensitive federal business. Ask for discretion. Most will cooperate once they understand. Cole nodded slowly, but something in his expression troubled Evelyn. After Dalton left to arrange the telegraph, she approached him. What is it? She asked quietly. What aren't you saying? Cole was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy. If we do this, if we go to Helena and confront Blackwood, we're putting ourselves in his reach. A man that powerful, that ruthless, he won't hesitate to eliminate threats. So we don't go to Helena. We let the marshals handle it. Evelyn, he turned to face her fully. Blackwood knows about you. Ridley would have told him about the school teacher who saw things she shouldn't. Even if we catch him, even if he goes to prison, he has resources. People loyal to him or paid by him. You won't be safe as long as he's free to give orders. The reality of it settled over her, like cold water. She thought catching Ridley would end this, would let her return to her life. But the danger ran deeper, the roots of this conspiracy stretching far beyond Pine Ridge. Then what do we do? She asked. We finish this, completely. Cole's hand found hers. We go to Helena. We make sure Blackwood goes down and stays down. Not just arrested, convicted with evidence so solid he can't buy or threaten his way out. That's dangerous. It is. But it's the only way you're truly safe. His thumb traced her knuckles gently. I won't lie to you. This last part might be the most dangerous of all. But I'll be with you every step. I promise you that. Evelyn looked at their joined hands, thinking of how much had changed since the night he'd walked into that cabin. She'd been running, broken, convinced her life was over. Now she stood ready to face the man ultimately responsible for her suffering. I'm tired of being afraid, she said softly. Tired of letting powerful men dictate my life. If we're doing this, we do it right. Pride and concern warred in Cole's expression. You're the bravest person I've ever met. I learned from a good teacher. He pulled her close, held her in the warmth and safety of his arms. When this is over, when you're truly safe and your name is cleared, I want to talk about the future. Our future. Evelyn's heart lifted despite the fear. I'd like that. I'd like that very much. They stood together as dawn began to gray the eastern sky. Outside, Pine Ridge stirred to life, the town waking to news that would shake it to its foundations. Inside, two people who'd found each other in the darkest of circumstances held on to hope and each other. Over the next 2 days, plans took shape. Marshal Crawford responded to Dalton's telegraph with cautious approval. He'd be in Helena with a team ready to arrest Blackwood when the gold shipment arrived. But he needed someone who could identify Ridley's associates, someone who'd witnessed the operation firsthand. He needed Cole and Evelyn to come to Helena. It's not ideal, Dalton admitted as they reviewed the plan. You'd be safer staying here. But Crawford's right. Your testimony about what you saw that night, what you found in Ridley's store, that's crucial to building an airtight case. We'll go, Cole said before Evelyn could respond. He looked at her, waiting for confirmation. She nodded. We'll go, but we go armed and we go careful. No unnecessary risks. I'm sending 2 of my deputies with you, Dalton said. Good men both. They'll help keep you safe on the journey. The night before they left, Evelyn visited the schoolhouse. It stood empty and dark, her desk covered with dust. Someone had left flowers there, dried now, but the gesture touched her deeply. A note in a child's handwriting read, "We miss you, Miss Grace. Please come back." Cole found her there, standing among the ghosts of her former life. "You'll teach again," he said gently. "All of this will be behind you, will it?" She touched her desk, the chalkboard, the primers lined up on the shelf. "Even when Blackwood's caught, even when everyone knows the truth, will they really forget that they believed I was a thief? Will parents trust me with their children? The ones worth knowing will." He came to stand beside her. "And if they don't, then we find a place that deserves you. There are other towns, other schools. You could teach anywhere, Evelyn." "We," she repeated, catching the word. "You said we find a place." Cole's hand found hers in the darkness. "If you'll have me. I know I'm not much, just an old bounty hunter trying to make good. But I meant what I said. I want a future with you. Teaching or traveling or building something new, I don't care what. As long as it's together." Evelyn turned to face him, saw the vulnerability in his eyes, the hope he was trying not to show too much in case she rejected it. This hard man, this killer who'd found redemption, offering her his heart. "I'll have you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "However you come, whatever you've been, I'll have you, Cole Anders." He kissed her then, deep and claiming, a promise and a prayer. When they parted, both were breathless, and neither was afraid anymore. Whatever came in Helena, whatever dangers waited, they'd face them together. "Tomorrow," Cole said, "we ride to Helena. We finish this." "Tomorrow," Evelyn agreed. "We finish this and start our life." They left the schoolhouse hand in hand, walking through the night toward an uncertain future. But for the first time since the accusations began, Evelyn felt truly free. Not because her name was cleared, that would come, but because she'd found something worth fighting for beyond justice. She'd found home in another person, and that was worth any risk. Helena sprawled across the valley like a promise of civilization in the wilderness. Larger than Pine Ridge by a factor of 10, it boasted brick buildings, paved streets, and the kind of commerce that came with being the territorial capital. The railway station dominated the eastern edge, a monument to progress and the wealth it brought. Evelyn watched it all from the window of the boarding house where Marshal Crawford had secured them rooms. She'd changed into her one good dress, borrowed a proper coat from Widow Hayes before leaving Pine Ridge. She needed to look respectable, a schoolteacher, not a fugitive. Appearances mattered when facing powerful men. Cole stood behind her, also cleaned up, his beard trimmed and his hair tied back. He wore a dark suit that made him look less like a mountain man and more like what he'd once been, a dangerous, capable hunter. The transformation unsettled her slightly. This was the man who'd tracked criminals across territories, who'd killed without hesitation when the law demanded it. "You're thinking loud," he said softly, "just remembering who you used to be. I'm still that man when I need to be." His hand settled on her shoulder. "That's what it means to survive, being what the moment requires. Right now, the moment requires someone who can face Blackwood and not blink." A knock at the door announced Marshal Crawford. He was a lean man in his 50s, grey-haired and sharp-eyed, with the bearing of someone who'd seen too much to be easily fooled. "The shipment arrived an hour ago," he said without preamble. "Blackwood's at the railway office now, supervising the unloading personally. My men are positioned around the building. He won't escape. But I need you both to come with me. Your identification of the gold, your testimony about finding it in Ridley's possession, that's what makes this arrest stick." "And Blackwood?" Cole asked. "He doesn't know we're coming. He thinks it's a routine customs inspection. One of my men played the part of Ridley's courier, delivered the shipment as expected. Blackwood has no idea we're onto him." Crawford checked his pocket watch. "We move in 15 minutes. I need you ready. When he left, Evelyn took a deep breath, steadying herself. This was it, the moment that would end the nightmare or extend it indefinitely. Cole handed her the small pistol she'd learned to shoot. "Just in case," he said. "I hope you don't need it." "But hope's not a strategy," Evelyn finished. "I know. I learned from a very thorough teacher." They shared a brief smile, finding courage in each other's eyes. Then they followed Crawford down to the street, where deputies waited with horses. The railway office was a substantial brick building with barred windows and heavy doors, built to store valuables securely. Crawford's men had surrounded it discreetly, positioned in alleys and doorways, watching every exit. To passers-by, nothing appeared unusual, but Cole saw the net drawing tight. "You two stay behind me," Crawford instructed. "When we enter, I do the talking. Anders, I know your instincts, but this needs to be by the book. No improvisation unless things go wrong." "Understood," Cole said, though his hand rested near his concealed pistol. They entered through the main door. The front office was empty except for a nervous-looking clerk who jumped when Crawford showed his badge. Federal Marshal. "Where's Blackwood?" "Back office, sir." "With the shipment. But he gave orders not to be disturbed." "He'll be disturbed." Crawford moved past the clerk, Cole and Evelyn following, two deputies flanking them. The back office door stood ajar. Through it, Evelyn could see James Blackwood, a well-dressed man in his 60s with silver hair and the confident bearing of wealth. He stood over an open crate, examining gold coins with a jeweler's loop, completely absorbed. Crawford pushed the door fully open. "James Blackwood, you're under arrest for possession of stolen government property, conspiracy to traffic in illegal goods, and accessory to theft and fraud." Blackwood's head snapped up, shock flashing across his features before he controlled it. "Marshal Crawford, what is the meaning of this? I'm conducting legitimate railway business." "That's Confederate gold in that crate," Crawford interrupted. "Stolen at the war's end, moved through your railway network. We have your associate Thomas Ridley in custody. He's been very cooperative about your organization." A lie, but Blackwood couldn't know that. His expression flickered, calculation replacing shock. His eyes moved to Cole and Evelyn, and recognition sparked. "You," he said to Evelyn, "you're the schoolteacher. Ridley said you were dead." "Ridley lied about a lot of things," Evelyn said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "Including about me being a thief. He stole that church money to frame me because I saw him with your men. Saw things I shouldn't have." "I don't know what you're talking about." Blackwood's voice was smooth, practiced. "If Ridley committed crimes, that's his responsibility. I'm a legitimate businessman who just happened to be personally inspecting a shipment of Confederate gold." Cole's voice was cold. "Gold that matches what we found in Ridley's safe. Gold that came through your railway on shipments you authorized. Your signature is on the manifests, Blackwood. We have them." Another lie, but Blackwood's face paled slightly. He was trapped and beginning to realize it. "I want my lawyer," he said. "You'll get one after we finish processing your arrest." Crawford nodded to his deputies. "Secure him!" As the deputies moved forward, Blackwood's hand drifted toward the desk drawer. Cole saw it, moved fast. "Don't!" Blackwood froze, meeting Cole's eyes. Whatever he saw there convinced him. His hand retreated. "Smart choice," Cole said softly. "I've arrested men like you before." Some came quiet. Some didn't. The ones who didn't, well, they didn't fare well. The threat was clear. Blackwood raised his hand slowly, allowed himself to be cuffed. But his eyes, cold and calculating, promised this wasn't over. The Federal Marshal's office in Helena was more secure than any frontier jail. Blackwood sat in an interrogation room, his expensive suit looking out of place against the rough wooden walls. Crawford had separated him from his lawyer for now, using legal technicalities to buy time for questioning. Evelyn watched through a small window in the door as Crawford laid out the evidence. The gold, the manifests they'd actually found in Blackwood's railway office, real ones, not a bluff. Ridley's letter, the testimony of Wilson and Crane, who'd agreed to cooperate once they understood how thoroughly they'd been caught. "You built an impressive operation," Crawford was saying, "moving Confederate gold through legitimate railway shipments, using merchants like Ridley as distribution points. Very clever. How long did you think you could keep it going? Blackwood said nothing, his face a mask. The thing about conspiracies, Crawford continued, is they require trust. And trust breaks down when people face the rope. Your men are talking, Blackwood. Every one of them trying to save his own neck by offering yours. Still nothing. But Evelyn saw the muscle in Blackwood's jaw tighten. Cole stood beside her, watching with the patience of a predator. He won't break, he said quietly. Men like him, they're used to buying their way out or using influence. He's waiting for rescue. Will it come? Evelyn asked. Not this time. Crawford's got him dead to rights. The evidence is overwhelming. Cole's hand found hers. It's over, Evelyn. Really over. Blackwood's going to prison, Ridley's going to hang, and you're free. The words should have brought relief. Instead, Evelyn felt oddly hollow. She'd spent weeks focused on this moment, proving her innocence, seeing justice done. Now that it was here, she didn't know what to feel. Crawford emerged from the interrogation room, looking satisfied. He's not talking, but he doesn't need to. We have enough to convict him 3 times over. The territorial prosecutor's already drawing up charges. This will go to trial, but it's a formality. He's finished. What about Miss Grace? Cole asked. Her name? Officially cleared as of this morning. I sent word to Pine Ridge. Sheriff Dalton will make a public announcement. The church theft charge is dropped, and there will be a formal apology from the town council. Crawford looked at Evelyn with something like respect. You showed remarkable courage, Miss Grace. Most people in your position would have run and kept running. You stood and fought. I had help. She squeezed Cole's hand. I couldn't have done this alone. Nevertheless, your testimony will be crucial at trial. I'll need you to stay in Helena for a few more days. Give a full deposition. After that, you're free to go wherever you choose. After Crawford left to process paperwork, Cole and Evelyn walked out into the Helena afternoon. The sun was bright, the air crisp but not bitter. Around them, life continued. People shopping, children playing, the ordinary business of civilization. It felt surreal after weeks of fear and flight. I don't know what to do now, Evelyn admitted. I spent so long just trying to survive, to prove the truth. Now that it's done, I feel lost. Not lost, Cole said gently. Free, there's a difference. He guided her to a bench near a small park, and they sat watching the town move around them. You get to choose now, Evelyn. Whatever you want. That's what freedom means. What do you want? She asked. Cole was quiet for a long moment. I want to wake up every morning without the weight of who I used to be crushing me. I want to build something instead of hunting things down. And I want, he turned to face her, I want to do all of that with you. If you'll have me. You asked me that before. I'm asking again. Now that you're truly free, now that you have choices, I want you to choose me, Evelyn, not because you need protection or because we're bound by circumstance, but because you want to. Evelyn thought about the woman she'd been before the accusations, alone, dedicated to her students, convinced that was enough for a life. Then she thought about the woman she'd become, stronger, braver, and no longer willing to settle for half a life. I choose you, she said firmly. Not just because of what we've been through, but because of who you are. Because you saw me when everyone else looked away. Because you believed in me. Because I love you. Cole's eyes shone with emotion. I love you too. Have since that first night in the cabin, though I didn't know it then. You saved me, Evelyn. Gave me a reason to be more than just a ghost on a mountain. He kissed her there in the Helena afternoon, in front of God and strangers and anyone who cared to watch. When they parted, both were smiling through tears. So what now? Evelyn asked. Where do we go? Anywhere you want to teach. I'm adaptable, he grinned. Though I'd prefer somewhere with a bit more civilization than Pine Ridge, and definitely somewhere that needs a man good with his hands who can carve and build and keep a schoolteacher safe. That sounds perfect. She leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart. We'll find a new town, make a new start, together. Together, Cole agreed. 3 days later, after Evelyn had given her full testimony and the prosecutor assured them their presence was no longer required, they prepared to leave Helena, but not to return to Pine Ridge. Instead, they planned to head west toward the coast. where new territories were opening and schools were desperate for teachers. The morning of their departure, a telegram arrived at their boarding house. It was from Sheriff Dalton, brief but meaningful. Town council formally apologizes. Church money recovered from Ridley's safe. Your position available if you want it. But understand if you don't. You deserve better than we gave you. Go with our blessings. Dalton. Evelyn read it twice, then folded it carefully and put it in her pocket. They want me back. Do you want to go? Cole asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. No. She said it firmly, without hesitation. They didn't believe in me when it mattered. I won't forget that. There are other students who need teachers, other towns that will appreciate what I offer. She took his hand. New places, new beginnings. That's what we both need, Cole smiled, proud and relieved. Then let's go find them. They boarded the westbound stage that afternoon, carrying everything they owned in 2 small trunks. As Helena disappeared behind them and the mountains opened up ahead, Evelyn felt the last chains of her old life fall away. She was free. She was loved. And she was heading toward a future she'd chosen for herself. That was worth every hardship, every moment of fear, every dark night in that cabin when she'd thought she might not survive. She'd survived. More than that, she'd prevailed, and now, finally, she could live. 6 months later, spring came to the small town of Millerton on the Oregon coast. The schoolhouse sat on a gentle hill overlooking the Pacific, its white paint fresh and its bell tower straight. Evelyn stood at the blackboard, teaching a dozen children their letters, and felt a contentment she'd never known in Pine Ridge. These people had welcomed her without question when she'd arrived with letters of recommendation from Marshall, Crawford and the Territorial Education Board. They'd asked no invasive questions about her past, only cared that she was qualified and dedicated. The children adored her, and their parents respected her. This was what teaching should be, built on trust and mutual respect, not shadowed by suspicion. Through the window, she could see Cole working on the small house they'd purchased at the edge of town. He'd taken to carpentry with the same focused intensity he'd once applied to tracking. Already he had commissions from neighbors who'd seen his work, furniture, repairs, even intricate carvings that people bought as gifts or decorations. His hands, once used for violence, now created beauty. The school day ended, and children filed out chattering and laughing. Evelyn tidied her desk, erased the board, and prepared for tomorrow's lessons. This routine brought her peace, the ordinary rhythms of education, the satisfaction of watching young minds grow. Cole appeared in the doorway, his shirt dusted with sawdust, a smile on his weathered face. "Good day?" he asked. "Very good." Samuel Wright finally mastered his multiplication tables, and little Margaret read an entire page without help. She gathered her things. "How's the house coming?" "Finished the porch railing. Tested it myself. Solid enough to lean on during storms." He took her satchel, and they walked together down the hill toward home. "Had a visitor today. Man from the next county over. Heard about my work. Wants me to build furniture for his daughter's wedding." "That's wonderful." Evelyn slipped her hand into his. "You're building quite a reputation. So are you. Heard Mrs. Thompson telling Mrs. Davies that you're the finest teacher this town's ever had. And that's after only 6 months." They reached their house, small but well built, with Cole's careful craftsmanship evident in every joint and corner. He'd built them a home, something neither had truly had before. Inside, Evelyn prepared supper while Cole cleaned up from his work. This domestic routine still felt new enough to be precious. Over dinner, they talked about their day, about the children's progress, about the bookshelf Cole was building for the schoolhouse. Simple conversations, ordinary concerns. Everything Evelyn had thought she'd lost forever. "I got a letter today," Cole said as they cleared the dishes. "From Sheriff Dalton." Evelyn looked up surprised. They'd had little contact with Pine Ridge since leaving. "What did he say?" "Ridley hanged last month. His men got prison terms. Blackwood's still awaiting trial, but Crawford says it's just procedure. He'll hang too, or spend his life in prison." Cole set the plates down, met her eyes. "It's really over, Evelyn. All of it." She absorbed the news, surprised by her lack of strong feeling. There was relief, yes, but not satisfaction. She'd never wanted vengeance, only justice. Now that it was done, she found she didn't need to dwell on it. Good, she said simply. They can't hurt anyone else now. Cole nodded, understanding. They'd both moved past the need for revenge. Their focus now was building, not tearing down. That evening, they sat on their new porch, watching the sun set over the Pacific. The ocean spread before them, vast and beautiful, nothing like the mountains of Montana, but equally awe-inspiring. Gulls cried overhead, and the salt air carried the promise of tomorrow. "I've been thinking," Cole said, his arm around her shoulders, "about getting married. Proper ceremony, not just living together. They'd been essentially married since arriving in Millerton, presenting themselves as such, but hadn't formalized it." Evelyn turned to look at him, saw the vulnerability in his eyes, still uncertain sometimes that she'd really chosen him, despite 6 months of proof. "I'd like that," she said softly. "I'd like to be your wife in every way." Relief and joy washed over his face. "I don't have much to offer. Just myself and whatever I can build with these hands. That's everything I need." She touched his cheek, feeling the roughness of his beard, the weathered skin that told the story of his hard life. "You gave me back myself when I'd lost everything. You believed in me. You loved me. That's more than most people find in a lifetime. You did the same for me." He caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm. "I was dead in every way that mattered up on that mountain. Then you walked into my cabin and brought me back to life." They sat in comfortable silence as stars emerged in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the town below, children played their last games before bed. Dogs barked. Someone played a fiddle. Life, ordinary and beautiful, continued around them. "Do you ever regret leaving Pine Ridge?" Cole asked. "The students you had there?" Evelyn considered honestly. "I regret how it ended. I regret that some of those children learned to judge before they had facts. But the leaving itself? No, I found something better here. Freedom, yes, but also possibility. And you. And me," Cole agreed, pulling her closer. A month later, they married in the small church in Millerton, surrounded by their new community and students who threw flower petals and laughed with joy. Evelyn wore a simple dress she'd sewn herself, and Cole wore his best suit. They spoke their vows with tears and smiles, and when they kissed, the children cheered. At the reception, as they danced to fiddle music under paper lanterns, Evelyn caught sight of her reflection in a window. She looked different from the frightened woman who'd fled into the Montana mountains. Her face was softer now, her eyes brighter. She looked happy because she was. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked, following her gaze. "That we found our way home," Evelyn said. "Not a place, but each other." "Best thing I ever found," Cole said, spinning her gently. They danced as night deepened and stars multiplied overhead. Two people who'd survived the worst and found the best in each other. Their story had begun in cold and darkness and fear, but it ended here, in warmth and light and love. Sometimes the hardest winters lead to the warmest springs. Sometimes the longest nights give way to the brightest dawns. Sometimes, when you lose everything, you discover what truly matters. Evelyn Grace had learned all these lessons, and in learning them, she'd found not just survival but joy, not just escape but belonging, not just vindication but love. Years later, she would tell her own children the story, how their mother had been falsely accused, how their father had saved her, how together they'd found justice and each other. She would teach them about courage and truth and the strength it takes to start over. But that night, at her wedding, she simply danced with her husband and felt grateful for every twist of fate that had brought them together. The cabin in the Montana mountains stood empty now, slowly returning to the forest. But it had served its purpose, a refuge in the storm, a place where two broken people had found each other and begun to heal. And somewhere in the vastness of the American frontier, in a small coastal town where the ocean met the land, a schoolteacher and a carpenter built a life worth living together.